And look at that. Look at that handsome devil.
Are we back? I think we're
We
back.
are back. Are we
Hey,
are we
Hapa.
back or are we just here? What's going on, Seven? How you doing?
Don't call it a comeback. I'm doing pretty well. My kids would have said that was a boomer moment, but I'm doing pretty well. It is June the 12th, 2024. I would have gotten away with it too if not for you meddling kids. That's another boomer moment. But the June the 12th, 2024, it is a Wednesday, and it is a Wednesday because you and I have decided that Wednesdays would fare better with schedules, particularly mine. And we're going to start doing every other Wednesday, and we're going to try like hell to be consistent. So this is our commitment to being consistent. Now, you are back from some travel. I did some travel in the meantime as well. And I'm glad to have you back, man. It is good to see you. We were talking just before the podcast. It was like 5 minutes or so we were talking. It's just good to get to hang out and chat again. It's been too long. So you were on the road
it's been 2 months. It's been 2 months since we did the last podcast. So
yeah, it's been a minute. So it's summertime now. It's hot. I imagine it's hot where you are too.
Oh my God, it's just okay. It's Texas, so we're preheating, but it's also like muggy. Like it's been crazy muggy here, and we've had storms and stuff like that, which is where that mugginess is coming from. But yeah, evidently summer's here. I'm kind of scared to see what July is going to be like in August. But
yeah, we went. So my son has gotten into golf, and I'm trying to get back into golf. And we went to the driving range, and we were going to hit a large bucket of balls. And he's got a camp coming up soon, this summer, and he's kind of getting ready for that. And so we went, and we were going to work through this large bucket of balls, and that's really about an hour and a half. It's 100 balls or so, so it's like an hour and a half worth of work. But I told him, let's speed it up. I need you to get some stamina up, work on your pace or whatever. He was done in less than an hour. But I looked over, and he was the color of your shirt. And I realized this kid's never dealt with heat exhaustion.
oh no!
Right? Like, this is new. So, like, the heat is one thing, but the heat and the humidity, it'll catch people off guard, man. And so, yeah, it's starting to get hot around here. People are starting to kind of avoid going outdoors at certain times of day and all that jazz. So, yeah, the humidity, to your point, it's the heat, but it's the heat and the humidity, and people just...
Well, and you guys always have that humidity, right? Like, I mean, from like May to whatever, October. It's normal for you guys, right?
Even during the winter we do. It's I mean, we're subtropical, right? We are
right.
So the way it is here, so I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, for anyone who's listening out, our listeners all over the world, that's where I'm located. And that is a subtropical region, so obviously the Gulf Coast is tropical.
Yeah.
We are right in that layer between tropical and subtropical. So we would be technically considered a rainforest area. And so like that humidity is just a constant thing. We get more rainfall than Seattle, right? It's just it's wet here. And you combine that with the heat, and if you grew up here, especially if you grew up here playing sports and stuff like that, you've kind of been out. Baseball as an example, it's a summer sport, you're out in it all the time. You learn all these techniques for cooling your body down. Sure. And I realized you also learn the triggers for, I'm experiencing something that triggers me to go cool my body down. Right. And if you've never, I realized with my son, if you've never been taught that, you don't know that, I'm a little dizzy, right? Or, I seem to be wearing out quickly, or, I'm getting a cramp in a weird muscle, right? Like, these things, the little triggers that, so yeah, we're working on that. So imagine you guys are having the same things out in, out in Central Texas there.
When I lived in Southeast Texas, it was the same thing, because we're kind of in the same, swampy area, and I would like to say that I got used to it, but I never really got used to it. You just kind of learn that you're just always just soaked in sweat. It's just kind of how it is, right? Yeah. And here, I mean, even, I was gone for about a month and had yard work and stuff to do. And normally I'll get up early in the morning and do the yard work and try to get inside before noon. But here it's been like 10 a.m. and I'm just like, all right, we're done. Like, I'm done. I can't do anymore. Like, just feeling gross.
10 a.m. It's early.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you, and it's been, not to get on about the environment and stuff, right? But we don't really need it to be any hotter. So no matter where,
we really don't.
Where you fall on your views on that, I don't want it getting hotter and wetter where I live.
Right.
I think I'm good.
I just think we need to start spraying metal particles into the atmosphere to reflect the sun. I think that's what we need to do.
Tinfoil, like
Yeah.
a
That's
big
all we need
mirror,
to do.
turn Earth into like a
That'll be
big
fun.
disco, big disco
That'll be
ball.
fun.
Turn Earth into a disco ball. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? What could go wrong?
What could go wrong when humans try to play with the
Yeah.
atmosphere? What could happen?
Nothing could go wrong. We're
Could
humans.
possibly
We're the apex of everything that is.
right.
Like, come on.
And ever will be.
That was sarcasm. In case you guys out there listening didn't catch.
Yeah, if this is your first time, welcome. First of all, second of all, that was definitely sarcasm.
And if you don't know sarcasm,
Yeah.
I think you'll learn because we use a lot of it.
Yeah, we do. I think we're going to use more going forward. I think
just
that's
how
how we
we
cope. we
Yeah,
were
it's
talking
literally.
earlier.
Yeah.
For anyone who listens or has listened to our podcasts, often what we do is we take headlines and we work through a set of headlines and talk about them. And I got to be honest, we're going to take a little different angle on it tonight. The headlines are hard to kind of filter through. So if you're out there and you're someone who enjoys current events and news and those things, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to turn off the 24/7 news. You're going to have to turn off all the sources, because what's out there now, man, it ain't good for your brain.
No, it's not good for your mind, your soul, your physical health, because all that affects physical health. Like, there's just the best thing you can do is just shut it off. Like,
Yep.
is it Denzel Washington? The best line that he ever I've ever heard of him say is, if you watch the news, you're misinformed. If you don't watch the news, you're uninformed, right? It's like one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can't win. You can't win. It is just the way it is. So, but this episode is called Bourbon Ginger Fizz.
Tell us the
As
bourbon
we've-
ginger fizz. Rabbi.
As we've said before, that my goal is to not run out of bourbon drinks. And
I don't know how you're
having
gonna do it.
issues. I'm having issues digging these up.
I have no idea how
I'm
you're going
telling
to.
you.
I'm impressed. Really thought by now we would have changed it, but you keep going. I'm like, all right, I'm impressed.
I will. I reach out to a couple of my friends that are still bartenders that I used to bartend with, and every now and then they come up with some zingers. And this is one of them. I got a text back, Bourbon Ginger Fizz, and it's an ounce of bourbon, an ounce of ginger beer, an ounce of club soda, and then an optional garnish of a lemon slice of rosemary. I didn't have rosemary, so I used a lemon slice. Let me tell you.
Well, that doesn't look good. Anybody who's watching on YouTube, that looks good.
Let me tell you, if you haven't thought about this combination of stuff together, this is delicious. Like, just straight up.
And I was telling you
Delicious.
before, the ginger beer
Cheers to you, by the
bourbon
way.
combination. Cheers to you,
Yeah.
bud. Good to see you. There's a drink that I got introduced to some years back called an Alabama Gentleman, and I gave you one of the last time we got together. I gave you a case of this
Yeah.
stuff. An
So
Alabama Gentleman
good.
is Gentleman Jack and Buffalo Rock Ginger Ale. So the combination of like a ginger beer
Yeah.
and bourbon is something I can. While I haven't had what you're drinking, what I can tell you is that is good, and I love an Alabama Gentleman. I just will sit and drink. Most people don't know Buffalo Rock Ginger Ale. If you've never had Buffalo Rock Ginger Ale, I contend you've never had ginger ale. Most people think Canada Dry and stuff like that, and it's not too sweet. Taste of can't do
Yeah.
beat, Canada Dry ginger
Yeah.
ale. Like that.
Yeah.
The Buffalo Rock is like the opposite end of that particular spectrum. That's like, you want to get kicked in the mouth by a mule? Try this.
I will tell you, so both Rita and I, when we came back from that meetup, both of us had COVID. And one of the things that we could still taste while we had COVID was that ginger beer. And that was the perfect drink to have. Seriously. So
I need to find one of the representatives of Buffalo Rock and say, look, here's a quote.
I'm telling
when
you.
I had COVID, I lost my taste. I can still taste this.
Yeah, I could still taste it. It was good. It was really freaking good. But no, you're not wrong. I have in the past put bourbon with ginger ale, or because a ginger bourbon is not a unknown drink. Like, that's a fairly normal drink that you might ask for, and I've asked for it at bars too before because I love it. But the little bit of lemon, and I imagine if you had some rosemary oil or even. I'm sure there's a simple syrup that's infused with rosemary out there. I'm sure. that's probably good with that too. But yeah, so
Well, that sounds
bourbon,
like a good one.
ginger.
That sounds
yes,
like a really
it's
good
delicious.
one. Sounds really yummy. The series of drinks that we've gone through, if you are curious, you should go back and just check the titles. We talk about the drink that we go through every time. This is, what episode is this, Hapa?
20.
Episode 20, okay.
By the way, this is not only our 20th episode, but as of, I think, May 22nd, we've been doing this for 2 years. 2 years.
Snap claps. That's snap claps. For anyone watching on YouTube, they can see it. For anyone listening, they're snap claps.
2 years.
2 years. 2 years.
Not
on our 20th
necessarily
episode, so you've got...
Consistent.
Yeah, but now we're on the other side of it. If you go listen on wherever you get your podcast, it looks consistent. It's just a list of 20 of them.
The optical metric is all that we care about.
Yeah. Nobody knows when I was like, can't do it today, can't do it today, can't do it today for 3 weeks in a row. No one remembers that. No one's keeping score.
Fair.
Are they? Hapa? Are you keeping score,
Look,
Hapa?
man, I
You
literally
should be.
have, you
You
can't
should
see
be.
it, there's a chalkboard here, and I've got it written down.
At the top
Check.
it says, son of a bitch, canceled again.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
tally
yeah,
mark,
yeah.
tally mark,
Check.
tally mark. Well, this podcast is when we do stream live. So if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, if you're listening to us there, thanks for listening. But if you'd like to see us live, you can also catch us on YouTube. You just search for Real Talk, REL Talk with Hapa. You can leave my name off of it because that's confusing as hell, and I know that. But if you do Real Talk with Hapa, you will find us on YouTube. And when we do these, you can come hang out and chat. So we got some folks hanging out and chat, which I'm really excited to see some folks that we haven't seen in a bit. 2 months since we've done this. So you can hang out there, or you can go find us. And if you find us and wherever you get your podcast, it looks like we do this very consistently. What I will say is we're making a commitment again every other Wednesday. So we're going to shoot for that. Now, things do happen. So like nobody's going to cry if it doesn't happen, but we are going to shoot for every other Wednesday so we can get more routine
For the
on
record,
doing
I
this.
cry a little bit every single time. Just
Do you?
one
You know,
tear.
even
Just
though
one tear down.
I absolutely know. I absolutely know you're kidding, but next time when I'm like, I have a death in the family, don't cancel because you don't make half a cry.
Jesus.
My wife's gonna be like, "Don't you dare make him cry!
Don't you make him cry.
Don't you make him cry!"
Thanks for getting my back, Mel. Appreciate you.
Yeah, she's gonna be like, "Suck it up! You can do the podcast in the funeral, lazy son of a bitch."
Oh my God. Honestly, I don't think a lot of people realize either. This is a great way. Like Seven and I have differing opinions on various things, but it's a great way for him and I to talk about things, I think, in general, and at the end of the day, sometimes just unwind from whatever it is that we're doing. I that's the one thing I really have appreciated about this is like it's so outside the norm, like it's completely different that it's something I really look forward to for sure. So
Me too. I mean, we met playing games, right? In
Yep.
gaming, we met in gaming, and we spent a lot of time streaming games together. And there's a subject that kind of lives there, which is gaming, and it's kind of nice to step outside of that. It's also nice. One of the things I appreciate about our relationship is we can disagree on things and do, and it just doesn't. I don't care, right? You don't care. Right? So
Yeah.
we disagreed. Who cared?
which is
and
crazy in
that's
this
rare.
world today, right? Like
Right, in this world these days, it's crazy. I mean, you used to sit down, have a drink, disagree at the bar, and see you tomorrow night. Like, that's how it would always go. And
exactly. Yeah.
we've completely forgotten how to do that as a society. So it's nice to just have folks you can be comfortable with, have a conversation outside the norm, and not be worried about. And we don't express another thing. Oh gosh, don't get me on a soapbox about society. But another thing is people think they have to express their opinions. They also think they have to convince someone else of their opinions. And both of those things are false. You don't have to tell anyone your opinion. Like, you don't have to say anything.
Yeah,
And B, if someone disagrees with you, you don't have to make them agree with you. Like, neither one of those things are true, but we've lost that. So it's nice for us to get to sit down and have a routine conversation. But now that you're back in town, it was my Ring doorbell, as you can imagine.
I thought you got one of those cool little chains hanging down by your back door or
No,
something.
no, that was Ring. Hey, Dor. So what's nice though, now that you're back, we probably will be doing streams and all the other stuff too, but we'll still have our podcast. We'll do it every other Wednesday and hop out. We also are not gonna. I think one of the things we talked about. I'm kind of just going through the list of things that were somewhat minor format changes, but we're not going to force necessarily a time box on ourselves. So we're going to explore subject, and that may splinter into 5 subjects, or it may stay on one subject. And if that's an hour, that's great. And if that's 2 hours, that's great. We're not going to really force it. We kind of were talking about it, and we want to have just more in-depth conversations without worrying about limiting ourselves or me having to move us along every 15 minutes or whatever the case may be, and see if we can explore some of the conversations that we were having a little bit deeper, I think.
Well, and I think one of the things that really hit me was on the drive up to visit my family. One of the things that really caught me off guard, because I listen to a lot of podcasts. Joe Rogan's one of them, and the guest had asked him, like, at what point did you recognize that you were getting big? And he's like, well, I went to do stand-up one day. It's like 3,500 people, a crowd. And I've been doing this podcast thing for a couple of years, not really thinking about it. I just turn it on and go and just talk, and I don't really I don't care about time limits. Everybody told me I needed to edit my time down and be careful. And he's like, look, man, the way I look at it, this format, you can listen however long you want to listen, and you can pause it, and you can come back to it, and you can not listen to it. But I'm doing this for me, and I'm trying to have fun doing it, and that's why I do it the way I do it. And I feel like this format, like I said, is perfect because you can, on the drive into work every day, listen to 30 minutes or whatever, and eventually you'll get through all of it. And I think that's one of the things why podcasts have kind of become so huge, is because it's media that you can consume at your own pace. You don't have to see the whole thing in the breadth of however long. You're not going to miss out. Like, it doesn't go away, right? So, and that was one of the things that I really appreciate about this too, is because we could just kind of go at our own pace, and because there are subjects where, in the past, where Seven and I have talked about it, and we've been like, look, man, we got to move on. Like, we've been talking about this for like an hour.
No, absolutely. There were some that we have talked about. You guys don't, anybody watching or listening doesn't necessarily know this, but there's times when we'll have a subject, we'll stop the podcast, and we will keep talking about the subject, right? And
like a couple hours.
and some of those times, the things that kind of come up in those moments are a little bit more raw and a little bit more, I think, interesting sometimes. Of course, we at that point drop all predispositions towards being, unoffensive or anything else. But at the same time, some of these subjects are things we want to dig into, and I think that we'll still do some of the, if headlines pop up, especially space exploration headlines, especially any of that stuff, we will grab it. But it's just hard to find now. They get buried. I imagine scientists are still exploring space. I imagine we're still trying to go to different planets and different, orbital bodies and things of that nature. But try finding those headlines now. Just try. If you want a good experiment, spend 10 or 15 minutes and go look and see how long it takes you to find something that's not motivated by politics or some sort of violence towards some group or another. It's just a lot right now. So, yeah, I'm happy to be doing it.
What was funny was, in the realm of that conversation, like, this past week, China landed a moon exploring lander on the far side of the moon, right? And I saw that article. I thought, oh, this is really cool. Like, I wonder what they're going to find out there. That the article headline was that, and then the entire article was talking about how China was just trying to beat us. I'm like,
how?
Like, nobody's looking at the scientific significance of this, even if that's the background of the thing. Like, how significant this is, the fact that we don't have any rovers on that side of the moon, right? So, like, this is a big freaking deal. But the whole article was just, word vomit. Like, not even worth reading because of that. It's just like, come on, man. Like, damn.
People selling ads, man. That's what it comes down to. They got to sell them ads. And you know what?
That's what it is.
They got to sell them ads. And, exploring the dark side of the moon, that should be an amazing...
We don't do it. We haven't done it.
Yeah.
People don't realize that the moon doesn't rotate, right? It faces us.
Right. It's always
the
dark
facade faces us, and we don't know really what's on the other side. And so, like, this is a big freaking deal. Like,
Yep.
come on, man. But
Man, Pink Floyd tried to tell us.
right? That's another boomer connection. Just saying.
Oh. It kind of is, isn't it? A Pink Floyd reference, I guess, is, yeah, I guess a Pink Floyd reference is
But it's a cool one because I'm sure your daughter listens to Pink Floyd or has listened to Pink Floyd.
Yeah, so the thing with teenagers nowadays is they wear band T-shirts. I guess it's always been a thing.
And they're
but the band
vintage?
T-shirts, they're vintage, right? And so basically what that turns into is a raid of my closet 3 times a week.
Fair. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've got some killer, as you can imagine, I've got some killer concert T-shirts and stuff like that. And so she comes out wearing like a Pink Floyd T-shirt, like not so you can tell me what they. You got to be able to tell me what tell me some songs by Pink Floyd. What do you like about them? What do you hate about them? And she'll go, I'll hear her in there, like she'll grab one of my records and go in there and put it on her record player and like listen to some Pink Floyd.
See, that's
Gotta
cool.
raise 'em up
though.
right, Hapa.
I mean, that's pretty awesome though that your kids are able to do that. Because I mean, come on, man. How many kids? There's been a few things that I've seen where they're talking about like this music or that music's brand new, and it's like, a mix from songs that aren't new, right? Like, so I mean, that's great that they're able.
Where
to
that my life actually took a pretty acute turn in that regard many years ago when my youngest sister, who is much younger than me, came in and was like, have you heard this amazing song? I was like, we're gonna bond over music. I mean, when you're 20 years older than your youngest sister, it's like, okay, you don't bond over a bunch of stuff, but it's like, cool, we're gonna bond over music. And she's like, yeah, it's this amazing song. It's just so great. This band just came out with it. I love it. I was like, cool, what's the song? Smooth Criminal by Alien Ant Farm. And I was like, at this moment, what do I do here?
get out, get out.
Out. And it was that moment of me realizing, I was like, so Alien Ant Farm did not write that song. And she's like, no, that fairly well-known musician and did that one. Nah.
Just one guy. You might have.
I mean, some might have heard of him. Michael something or another. But, it was that moment of my life where I was like, if I ever have kids, I am going to raise them up in such a way that they will, even if they think certain music is lame, right? They're like, that's not my style. I don't like it. Even if they do that, they will have an appreciation for the music existing.
Right.
Right. And it's like, oh, cool. I understand what maybe Widespread Panic's not your thing, but you should understand what the musical composition of Widespread Panic is. And so, whenever like my daughter comes in wearing like the Pink Floyd shirt, or she'll come in wearing like my Black Crowes T-shirt, and it's like, but she can tell you Black Crowes, bang, 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 right? Like
That's
Remedy,
fantastic.
Talks to Angels, right? Like, just go all the way through it. Yeah. So, to me, man, that stuff I think is cool. But Pink Floyd reference, we're all the way back to. See, this is how we take tangents, dear listener, in Kingston, Jamaica. This is this.
It's okay though,
is
because
how
they
we
like
take
Pink
tangents.
Floyd in Kingston, Jamaica. So
You think they do?
I know they do. Those are my people. What are you
Really?
talking about? I don't
Really?
know. I'm just trying to get a free ride when we go visit sometime.
Down to Kingston. I tell you, because if people in Kingston, Jamaica love Pink Floyd, I can put together a Pink Floyd cover band like in 2 days.
Just saying. We're just saying.
That I can make happen.
We're just throwing it out there, Kingston, Jamaica.
Just,
I would
just
love to come
spitballing here.
down and have some of your coconut crab and enjoy some beach relaxation.
I have a feeling if I went to Jamaica right now, given the state of things in the world, I would probably just stay. I think that's probably how that would go.
This is bad. This is a problem.
No, I don't think so. I think,
Okay then.
I was you
Let's go.
were traveling. Yeah, you were traveling. I was traveling. We went down to the Gulf Coast, and we were staying in a condo that we always stay in. Same people, right? And we've formed a relationship with them over years, and so we're sitting in this condo, and it's on the 23rd floor. This particular condo building is on the top floor, is the 23rd floor, and that's high enough that you don't hear people, but you hear ocean, and you hear the kind of things you want. So every morning we have coffee out there. Every night we have a drink out there, and we go to bed. And I was watching in the morning these guys. They've been there for years, and they have 4 jet skis. So they have 2 at our condo and 2 at the one next to us. They come out every morning, same Tundra, right? Toyota Tundra. They drag their jet skis out, put them down there. A couple guys jump out of the truck. They spend all day renting out jet skis to people who want to be at the beach. That's what they do all day long. End of the day, truck comes around, they pick up the jet skis and go home. Now, the fact that these same guys have been doing this for however long makes me believe they are at least getting enough money to have food.
Right.
I would, it is an older Tundra. They're probably not making millions, but it's enough money to be like, I can live in a home with a roof over my head and I can get enough food. And I told Mel, I was like, I bet we could get 4 jet skis, get a small house and make a run of it down here. And just like forget everything else. Like everything else, just like all this other stuff, just go. I'm renting out jet skis on the beach, man. That's what I do now.
Yeah.
Don't harsh my vibe. I'm down here renting jet skis.
And this is a good conversation we're having too, because one of the things Seven and I talked about before then, because when we were rolling into getting ready to do this episode, to give you guys some context, he and I literally will start talking days in advance before the podcast, and we're throwing topics onto the list, and we're talking about this stuff, and I'm putting talking points down, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a full list. Well, if you haven't been able to tell, like we've been streaming for about 30 minutes now, we haven't really hit on any specific topic. So this episode, we are literally just talking. And the reason for that is because, sometimes I think it's good to just break away from that stuff. And I don't know how it was for you, but for me, this wasn't so much an idea because I couldn't find topics. It was just because I feel like we had some stuff that we could talk about that we didn't need to have topics. Now,
I agree.
We might be wrong. You might hate this episode. This may be our least downloaded and listened to. We'll take the learning point from that, But one of the things that I thought I was going to do when I retired from the Navy, this was the Hapa's master plan. Okay, when I retired from the Navy, my idea was
Master Chief's master plan. I love it.
Exactly. I was either A, going to start a food truck business, or B, I was going to provide food at a brewery that my friend was thinking about starting.
Oh, like a gastropub kind of thing.
Yes. That was literally the idea, was the gastropub.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about brewing. My buddy knew a lot about brewing to the point where he was brewing at home. He was brewing his own beers regularly, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, I know that I can cook. And I know I am really good at cooking like tapas or little things that you would eat while you're drinking. So I know I would be very successful. Now, as these things go, I kind of started looking more into what went into having like an actual full-on kitchen, and I recognized pretty quickly that my love to cook may turn into, and it was probably more of a fear thing. I was worried that if I was doing it for work that I wouldn't love doing it as much. So that idea
because anything becomes a job.
Right. And that idea kind of set aside, and then as some people do, that friend turned out to be not as good of a friend, and so I kind of disconnected from them, and then obviously I got the job working for a video game publisher, and I moved here to Austin, et cetera, et cetera. But I tell you all that because what does cooking in a food truck or a gastropub have to do with my job working with weapon systems and advanced electronics in the Navy, right? Absolutely nothing to do with
You hope
it.
nothing.
Right. Yeah, if I'm doing advanced electronic stuff in the kitchen, we've got bigger problems we got to worry about.
Yeah. This burrito tastes like gunpowder.
Exactly. And that was the thing, is like I recognized when I was probably about at the 18-year mark, I recognized that I was mentally, emotionally, or I guess
18-year mark meaning 18 years old or 18 years?
18 years in the Navy. Sorry.
In the
18
Navy.
years in the Navy.
Okay, so yeah, gotcha.
You can retire at 20. At about 18 years, I recognized that I don't think I was at a place in the world that I wanted to be. And Seven and I kind of talked about this before we went into the podcast, obviously being in the military, working with ordnance, working with advanced electronics, everything has to be perfect. If you don't do things perfectly or by regulation, unfortunately, people can die, massive amounts of money, et cetera, loss of life. And that kind of got to me at a level of, as a chief in the Navy, our job is to make sure things were correct. Well, correct meaning perfect. Well, if things weren't perfect, I was getting anxiety. I was getting very angsty. I would get very angry. I would go home angry every day. That anger would stay, because you'd work an 18-hour day. You'd get home. You're still angry when you go to bed, and then you got to get up at 4 a.m. and do it all again. So you're just in this perpetual state of just tension and anger and stress, and I wasn't happy. I realized I wasn't happy doing that. Now, I tell you all this because the majority of folks that retire from the military will go on to doing civilian jobs in the realm of whatever they did while they were in, right? That makes sense. You can make usually a lot more money doing it as a civilian versus in the military. And I had job offers from Raytheon, from Lockheed Martin, from, all these different companies starting me at extremely high levels of money. But I thought about it, I was like, do I want to do this crap as a civilian? I'm going to work and coming home, just in this perpetual tense blob of human flesh that just wasn't happy every day. So when I retired from the Navy, flesh. I mean, that's all it was, right? You're just a zombie. You got up at 4 in the morning.
Yeah, a zombie.
Yep. You're living off. I was living off coffee and Monsters all day, every day. It was not a good existence, right? And I remember there was a point when I was nearing retirement age. I had this conversation with my mom. I think I just called her, and I think just to see how she was doing and everything. And halfway through the conversation, she had asked me, she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "What?" Are you okay? It's like, what do you mean, Mom? She's like, you don't seem okay. You don't seem like yourself. Something's... And it's like that little fluorescent light bulb above my head just kind of flickered on finally. I was like, no, I'm actually not okay. Mom, I'm nearing 20 years in the Navy. I was trying to figure out whether I want to stay in or not. She was like, you need to retire. She didn't even listen to anything else. She said, you need to retire. You need to get out. Because I could do another 4 years... as a chief, if I made senior chief, I could do another 6. If I made master chief, I could do another 10. And I was on par to make all those ranks. But she was like, you need to retire. And, that was my, epiphany. The next day I put my papers in, I was retiring. And I was like, I am not doing anything related to the Navy. Nothing. Not a single damn thing. And I say all that because I recognized then that none of that crap mattered. None of this hustle and bustle that we're doing every single day to earn a living matters. If you're able to be happy because let me be clear, as a retired guy from the military, I am not living fat on the hog. I am not some rich freaking guy. People always are blown away by this idea that I'm fully retired right now, thinking, man, he must have had a lot of money. No. I'm comfortable. I'm living comfortably. Don't get me wrong, but I'm definitely not rich, and that's why I try to tell a lot of folks that I know is if you can figure something out like that, those guys, they're probably happy as all hell. That's their job every day,
guys.
Right?
Yeah. Jet ski guys. I know. I talked to them. I talked to them, and it's do you like this? And he's like, yeah. The people can be a problem, and I was like, well, there you go. Right? Every job's got its thing.
People.
But
it's people, right?
Right. And so I find ways to be happy. So you're sitting there, you're coming up on 20 years, and you talk to your mother, and she was kind of the person that was
she snapped me out of it.
Kind of the canary in the coal mine. You don't see this about you, but I see this about you, and right. And she kind of
and I recognize
but kind of slaps you into waking up.
Well. And to be clear, I kind of already knew. But it's always bred into us. You work until 60, whatever, and then you retire, and then you spend blah 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 blah. That's kind of everybody is taught.
Okay. I don't know about everybody, but I was as well, right? And I agree. A lot of people I know were, and I've had moments in my career where my wife has come to me and she's been like, this is what you're doing is just not getting done. And there's a moment where you have to kind of be honest with yourself, and you're like, yeah, I know. But you won't say that to yourself because or at least what I would do is I'll fool myself into believing there's a greater good. There's a reason I'm doing this. I would be bailing out if I were to stop doing it, right? Like, I'm supposed to suffer, almost like I'm supposed to suffer. Like, that's what I'm here for. Is I'm here to suffer. Like, what is life? I was saying this to Classic Live earlier in your stream. He came to town and we were talking. We were laughing about this over dinner, and it was like, what is life without struggle? Even well, it's a lot of things. But that's the way a lot of people look at it. What is it without the struggle? Do you really want to be defined by your struggle? Like, is that really?
Yeah.
But that's what we're taught. That is what we're taught. So you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm super curious about this story. You mind if I ask questions around it?
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So you're like, all right, Mom, gotcha. You've woken me up. I knew it was true. I didn't know other people could tell as well. I'm going to run down the path. I'm going to go file my papers now. So that next day when you filed your papers, did you feel different? Or
Not
was
at
it?
First.
Not at first. Okay.
Because unfortunately, when you're at that point in the Navy, your life is paperwork. Like you're upper management. So I imagine for you, it's a lot of the same way, looking at reports and filling this and filling that. So for me, it was just another report. It wasn't until my commanding officer, a full bird captain who had been in the Navy for over 30 years, right? This guy he's in command of a major vessel. Like, he is the guy, like photon torpedoes out kind of guy. Like, he's the guy that,
You guys had photon torpedoes?
right? Disclaimer: there aren't actually photon torpedoes. But no, I
you know of.
That I know of. Yeah, I filed the paperwork and I sent it up to our admin folks, and I sat back down at my desk, and I started doing my regular job, and then I heard my name over the loudspeaker, which anytime you hear the commanding officer, by the way, on the loudspeaker call someone's name out. That's kind of like, if your mom or dad screamed your name from across the house and your siblings
and
are like,
your middle
oh!
Yeah, they like use your middle name. Uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly.
I had forgotten I had a middle name until just now.
Yeah, exactly. And so this captain called out my name. He was like, because what they do is they say your name, and then if you're at the rank I was, they say your presence is requested, and then wherever. And in this case, it was the captain's in-port cabin, because they have two cabins, one for at sea, one at port. Well, he said my name and then just said in-port cabin, and that's breaking. Yeah, that's breaking like how you're supposed to say it. So I already knew. I was like, thinking in my head, like, what did I do? What did Dad's mad? Like, what did I do?
Oh yeah.
So I ran, and I even heard some of my fellow chiefs, several decks down, going, "Ooh," like I'm in trouble. And I get in there and I knock on the door, and he's like, he looks at me in dead in the face, and he says, "Hey, Chris, have a seat." So now I'm really thrown off, because this man doesn't call you by your first name. He says Chief. He calls you Chief. Your name is Chief, right? It, like, jokingly, there's videos online where enlisted people will ask, "Hey, Chief, what's your name?" "Chief." "What's your first name?" "Chief." "What's your last name?" "Chief." Like that.
Chief.
Exactly. And so he says, "Hey, Chris, have a seat." And so I walked in. I was like, "Yes, sir." And I had a seat. And he's like, "What the hell is this?" I was like, "Sir." He's like, "What the hell is this shit?" And he opens it up to my retirement papers. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "That's my retirement papers, sir." He's like, "I'm well aware of what they are." He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "What do you mean, sir?" He's like, "We need people like you. What are you doing?" And so I laid it all on the table for him. Like, I told him everything, how I wasn't recognizing myself and blah, 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 blah. And at the end of it, he was like, "Look, man, here's the deal." He's like, "I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate that, you recognize this about you, and I appreciate your mom, like, recognize this about you, because, like you just said, like, oftentimes people that are outside our internal bubble need to be the ones to tell us, hey, you're being an idiot, kind of thing. And he's like, if you hadn't told me that story, I was going to deny your retirement papers and let the higher ups figure it out. He's like, because you're one of the few people on this ship that if I'm doing something stupid and I look at you, and because I'm not one of those people that can hide my expression. So if you're doing something stupid, you're getting you're doing something stupid expression on my face. He's like, there's been a few times where we've been in meetings and someone's saying something, and I don't even need to ask that person a question. I could just look at you. And whatever expression you got on your face, I already knew that person's an idiot. Like, and he's like, we're going to miss you, blah, 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 but I'm going to endorse this. We're going to send it up, and, you go on your way. And that was one of those things that, and after that, a lot of people, once they get the retirement papers in, too, they jokingly will say, well, you put your rucksack up. You basically are just biding time. I did my job all the way up to, like, the last week I was in the Navy. I was still doing my freaking job. And that last week, I was having to tell people, y'all know I'm gone next week, right? Like, you might want to find someone to do it. Yeah, like, kind of thing. And even after I left the Navy, I had people texting me and stuff, asking me questions. I'm like, well, I'm Mr. Chief now. I'm not Chief anymore, So you all need to figure this out. Yeah. But
that's actually good. You didn't do Master Chief, but you did Mr. Chief. That's actually...
I did Mr. Chief, yeah,
Yeah.
But I will tell you, once I left that ship the last time, my stress level and everything came way down. Like I learned that I had to just, if there's stuff outside of my control, I couldn't get upset about it anymore. Not everything has to be perfect. You do the best you can. If it doesn't get done perfectly, that's just the way it is. You can't help it. There's nothing you can do. You can always look back and learn from it, of course. Everybody does that. And sometimes you try things and it works, and sometimes you try things and you're like, well, that didn't work. On to the next thing, And that was something that brought me down quite a few notches, but then I recognized on this drive, because going to visiting my family in Oregon, that's a 2,500-mile drive. Here to there, and 25.
Oh, I was mapping it out because you actually sent me the route, and I was showing. Yeah. I was showing my daughter. I was like, "Look at this route, like the stops," because you had mapped out the stops or whatever along the way. And I was like, "This is a for real road trip. It's not like a couple hours, 4 hours, even 6 or 8. It's a drive.
Yeah, there was a couple days I did 7 hours. A couple days I did like almost 9 hours of driving, And I was telling Seven before, I downloaded a lot of podcasts and I just didn't listen to the news at all. And it sounds silly, but I kind of had a spiritual awakening because a lot of the podcasts centralized around life and dealing with life and personal growth and et cetera, kind of made me reflect on a lot of things. And obviously going back to Oregon, so for those of you that don't know, May is kind of a rough month for me because my mom passed away 2 years ago. Her birthday's in May, Mother's Day's in May. I'm going back to, where I grew up, so I'm seeing that family area. I'm seeing the house, and so it's a lot of emotion, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety around that. But at the same time, it's also a great reset for me because, you sit here and you do all the work and stuff around the house and you're doing this, that, and the other, but to get away from the computer and everything and drive and go be with family and go recharge on the Oregon coast was amazing. So it really was like a mental and like almost physiological, is that a word? Physiological?
Yep, physiological. Yep. That's the one.
Reset for me because I recognized some of the stuff that I was starting to stress about, like, it was pointless. It's pointless. Just no point. There's no point in stressing out about it. Like, if you want this, you save up to get it. If you don't have the money to get it, you save up to get it. You can't afford that, you can't afford it. Whatever it is, obviously barring paying your bills, obviously you need to do that, but it's one of those things that I just recognize right away that life is so finite, right? It is so finite. There's no point in stressing about half the crap that we do. And I don't know if that's a realization more so because I'm retired now, because I figured the average person retiring at 60 something, and they're realizing this stuff when they're 65, 70, 80 years old. And here I am, like, I'm not even 50 yet, and I'm recognizing that stuff. So I don't know if that's because I'm retired now, or it's, unfortunately the people that in my life that passed away or whatever. I don't know why. I recognize that now. Right.
Yeah,
Sorry.
There's some fundamental truths. No, it's great. There's some fundamental truths, and one of the ones that I've had this saying for a long time is, if you're not happy with what you've got, you'll never be happy with what you get. And I think
100%.
people
Yeah.
really don't understand that. And I've watched. There was an executive course I was part of. It was for senior executives, and this course was specifically. We were evaluating it, but we went through the course, and the course itself was put on by two people who are psychiatrists, right? And they've been therapists, executive management therapists for both of them for decades, and they had come up with this. We've seen this 1,000 times in all of our different therapy sessions, and here's a course that we're put together, and it was really to help people evaluate whether they wanted a promotion or not.
Sure.
And I think people on the kind of surface of that are like, "What? You always want a promotion?" That's not true.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're taught, and that's what we would always say. I always thought that was a great example of what you're always taught is always take the promotion, right? Because what you're doing now is working your tail off, being miserable so you can get that promotion. And what happens inevitably is people get the last promotion.
Yep.
In other words, you're in the seat. There is nowhere else to get promoted to, and they turn nearly suicidal.
Oh my gosh.
Because they have the realization you're talking about. They're sitting in the chair. They're in the office. They've got all the responsibility. They probably have all the money. They probably have all the trappings of a senior executive life, the car, the house, the whatever. And they sit there and they think, this isn't at all what I imagined. It didn't matter. None of it mattered. And the number one outcome of this course, so we decided to use it, right? So we evaluated it. All of us were like, wow, this was amazing. We decided to use it. So when someone was going to get promoted to a VP level or a director level, a lot of times we would say, look, go through this first. And there were plenty of people who would come out of that course and be like, I don't want a promotion. I've got too much other stuff going on. I've got me work to work on. I don't think a promotion is going to make me happy. And the only question you ask is, are you happy with that? And if the answer was yes, it's like, hell yeah. And there was nothing more valuable you could get out of a course than someone realizing what you're talking about, which is maybe some of this stuff ain't worth stressing about, man.
Yeah.
Like maybe some of this stuff, but the human stress reaction, when you're talking about work, right? You're talking about being in the Navy. The things that you were doing, not figuratively, were life and death things. Now, that doesn't mean that literally every time you did them, they were life and death.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because of the role, you needed to treat them every time you did them like life or death. And so the amount of stress and anxiety your body, it was fight or flight every single time you did it. And every time you went through it, and every time you were handling it, you lived in that state for too long. That will kill you eventually, right? Like, that is a stress state. People do that in corporate America.
Yeah.
Right? And just you go get a job and people have the same stresses, and their way your body reacts, our bodies are not physiologically geared to handle that kind of stress. And so the only reaction it has is fight or flight. Fight or flight is a survival instinct. So when your back does that, right? When you start getting I'm sweating, or you start getting whatever, that is fight or flight. That is your body literally saying, I'm going to have to fight for my life here. So how messed up is it that that's what happens when a report is late?
Right.
And a monthly report that comes out every month, it doesn't show anything different from the previous month. It won't show anything different the next month. Yeah. But it's a day late because something happened. Someone had a death in the family or whatever the case may be. And you're like, oh, that is unacceptable stress. You should get fired. You should lose your career, right? If people lose their minds over what seems like such a big deal to them in the moment, and in the grand scheme of things is nothing. It's not that it's a small thing. It's literally nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. Yeah. There was It's funny that you mentioned that about wanting the promotion, because there was, when I was working in corporate America, there was a couple times when you do your annual assessment, and they'd always ask me, "Where do you see yourselves in 5 years?" I was like, being a community manager, and they were like,
that's always the question. Where are you going to be in 5 years?
Yeah, you don't want to be a senior community manager? Why would I want to be a senior community manager? I have to deal with you people, like I have to deal with you upper management. And I don't get to do the job which I originally fell in love with, which is talking to people. Like, why would I want to do that? Like, I'm happy where I'm. If you keep giving me pay raises in the position I am, I'm going to try to be the best damn community manager I could possibly freaking humanly be, because that's what I love. This is the job that I want to be in. Like, what? And they would always look at me weird because I didn't want to have that vertical growth. And I'm like, you guys don't understand. Like, I'm happy where I am. Like, I'm perfectly happy. But so that leads me into my question to you. Are companies out there? Because I've always been told that if you are not looking to promote, eventually companies will get rid of you.
So let me run through this real quick. This is going to be a good conversation, but part of this is I am going to kind of for the first time tell people a bit of what I do, right? I don't often talk about it, but I'm an executive in the software industry. And so the reason I bring that up, and the reason I think I want to talk about it that way, is because software development and software engineering is such a different thing, where you have software engineers who get better and better and better at software engineering. They have infinite value.
Sure.
And their infinite value isn't being a manager. In fact, the thing that made them a good software engineer probably makes them a pretty shitty manager.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And the thing that would make them a good manager would probably make them a pretty shitty software engineer. So in that industry, you do have, I think, the reason I'm saying it this way, that industry's been around since the late 70s. And we are just now as an industry coming to the realization that you shouldn't always be seeking a promotion.
Right.
And that is an industry where if you're a manager in that industry, you simply can't be a great worker in that industry. So where this comes from, oh my God, I could go deep on this, and I won't do it today, but we could at some point. Where this comes from is these old philosophies that people had when you're talking about running a company, and they go back to the assembly line, right? So there was a whole set of methods that we still use today to tell whether we're efficient or not. And it came from a single dude up in Pittsburgh at a steel yard walking around with a notebook and observing people doing tasks. And he said, oh, look, here's the one big long thing we need to do. But if I look at this one little area where, these two people take that thing from there to there, let's make that one thing more efficient. And so he would work with those two people. How do you be faster? How can you go faster? How can you do something quicker? How can you be more efficient? They get that very efficient, and they'd move the next chain. So that was pervasive. It was also never scientifically accurate. So but it's pervasive in the industry. So it came from this assembly line mentality. That's where the assembly line, like, cool, let's build that out.
Sure.
And that way of tracking efficiency, what it led to is the foreman now, the person in charge, just knows multiple pieces of stuff.
Right.
And so I know how to be efficient here. 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 I must be in charge. And so you put those people in charge, and those people would be seen as more valuable to the organization. And we've continued that mentality. But I want to go, I'm sorry this is going too long, but I want to go way back. I was talking to a professor, this has been probably 8 or 9 years ago, and he was working on a book. And he was showing me a map that he had gone to India and he had seen. And it was a map from the East India Trading Company. Now, the map was the hand-drawn, because, there was a time when maps had to be drawn by hand.
Yeah.
And the only way to make them was to put a bunch of people on a boat and being like, you go that direction. And I want you to draw whatever you find. So here's your cartographer. And I want you to come back. And so these people would go out. And so in the day of this, when the East India Trading Company, these missions, right, these ships that they would send out, those were your startups. That's today, in today's world, those are your startups. High risk, send them out. Now here's what was really interesting about the research he was doing. The research he was doing was into the mentality of the person that ran the ship, the captain.
Right.
Do you think if I put you on a boat, you've been on a boat, right?
Yeah,
This guy,
couple of
I'm
them.
talking to someone who's been on a boat,
Right.
and I sent you and a bunch of sailors out to sea, and you had no idea where you were going.
Right.
None. Do you think you could be a hard-ass leader and live?
I suppose it would depend on what kind of ship it would be, but probably not.
Probably not. And what
Eventually
they found
your
is
sailors would be like, no.
100%. 100%. And that's what happened. And so the leadership that you chose was specifically chosen to handle a mutiny
Right.
because a mutiny was seen as inevitable. And all a mutiny was seen as was they know something you don't know and you're not listening to them. Change
Right.
your listening behavior
Right.
or convince them of your viewpoint. And so that was the role of those
Yeah.
captains.
Yeah.
Was we're all going here, we're all getting paid by what we discover, right? And or no, I think you're right, we should turn around and go home, or we should whatever the thing might be.
Right.
So these captains, these ships, they were all put together because the guy in charge, the person in charge, was able to be an empathetic, engaging leader. Now, at some point when we began factories, that went out the window. And now the person in charge tells everyone what to do. They're a hard ass. And then everyone looks around and says, boy, I sure do want to be that guy because I don't like being this guy. And we
then
just
they end up doing it.
beat
right?
each
They
other.
ended up- they've
Yeah.
been ending up doing that anyway, right? Yeah.
100% they do. And it's just a perpetration of the toxicity that you were describing. When someone comes to you and is like, you're a great community manager, let's say.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, hell yeah, I am. I love it. You love it. I love it. Cool, get a raise. See you later.
Yeah.
That's the end of the conversation.
Keep it up.
Yeah,
And
nice job. High five.
You would think,
you need anything
you
from
would
me?
think that would be intuitive. You would think that would be how you should be handling it. Like, you're great at your job. I know, I love my job. Great, here's a raise. Keep doing it. Keep being amazing. Like, I'm not going to let you go because you don't want to be at the board of directors or whatever. Like that to me is just is silly. And I think the majority of people. Let me rephrase that. I don't think a majority of people. I think there's a large group of people that have recognized that it's okay to be happy in the situation that you're in. I think that's a growing trend because it's a positive and a negative. Because you have a lot of people that are like, I'm okay being on welfare for my entire life. Like, obviously, that is not great for the masses, right? But, like, if
Yeah.
you're those guys renting Sea-Doos or whatever on the beach and they're doing it
Yeah.
and they're having a blast because they're just enjoying the beach, or like I've seen people doing fishing charters, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I can't remember where it was that I read. There was a guy that was in corporate America. He was earning 6 figures a year, and one day he went on vacation with his family down to Key West, and he came back
Yeah.
and he said, I quit. He just quit and sold his house, moved his entire family to Key West, and now he just does fishing charters. Like, that's all he does. He owns a boat. He goes out there. He goes fishing for a living. And his income is a fraction of what it was, but he's like 10 times happier. Like, you know what I mean? And I
100%.
feel like not enough people have that epiphany to themselves. Like they're beholden to this idea that I have to do this, or I have to whatever. Perfect example. I got 2 sailors that I'm not even, I kid you not, I did not own them when I was in the Navy. They had a different chief, but they came to me asking me to be their mentor because their chief would regularly berate them and tell them, you guys are garbage, you're never going to amount to nothing, you're going nowhere in the Navy, you're like just on and on and on and on and on.
Really?
And I'm like, I never understood this. Why would you ever talk to your own sailors that way? These are your for all intents and purposes, your kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
I joke all the time that I have a bunch of kids. I had a bunch of kids when I was in the Navy.
Yep.
This past year, both of them graduated from college. One of them with a bachelor's in psychology, the other in a master's in, I don't even know what the hell it is. It's like medical management, like the management folks that run hospitals. Like,
Yeah, the administration
She
folks?
got administration. Yeah, she got her bachelor's in nursing like 2 years ago, and she went on and did her master's and got her and both of them messaged me with graduation photos saying, I won't say the guy's name, but screw you, senior chief, blah blah blah. But here's the thing: both of them have been out of the Navy for over 4 years, but they remember when that idiot told them that they would never amount to anything, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. Like, if you go through life treating others like crap, like that has that leaves an imprint. Like, and that's horrible. That people don't realize
100
that.
100%, dude. So anybody who was curious about what I was talking about earlier, it's called Taylorism. It's scientific management if you want to know more about it. And what that believes is you can bully people into these higher performances. Jack Welch did this all the way up through GE, right? And you look at GE and people still like, oh my God, Jack Welch, he was a god, right? People still, there are still human beings that think that was the right behavior, right? It was he was
And
super,
probably still
super
act
narrowly,
that way.
They do, they absolutely do, and they were like super focused on shareholder value and to the expense of the entire working segment. And I do think that we are getting. You and I are both Generation X, right? But we're at the very, millennials are not that far behind us. And I think that at least with millennials as a generation, you're starting to see more people earlier in their life start saying, my life is not about making shareholder value, right? And it's a good thing. And I think that a lot of the folks that I deal with, a lot of my peers that I talk to, they don't really understand that, right? They still talk about Taylorism, right? How do I make you more efficient? The way to make someone more efficient is to make them happy. That is what overwhelmingly research indicates. And if you want to be good at your job, you have to be happy. So to your point, all the way back to when your mom said, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
What she was actually saying is, you're not going to be that good at your job for that much longer. Right? There is a limit to how long you can do that, simply because the human body won't sustain it. It just won't do it. And when you bring in people, that was in sports. It was the same thing. Bring in people coaches who are just maniacs, and they yell at people, and they leave scars, and they don't want to work for you, and they won't do their best for you. They'll do the bare minimum to keep from getting yelled at, and that will be the standard.
Yeah. Well, and that's literally the metric that you set is what is enough to keep this guy off of my back. Like, that's the metric that you're setting for your people, right? And to go back to what you were saying is a perfect example. By the time that I retired from the Navy, I literally had migraines every single day, like clockwork. At noon every single day, I'd start seeing sprites, and then I knew I had about 30 or 40 minutes to get home or go take a nap or something to get rid of the migraine. My back was constantly just a tight ball of tension. I constantly had neck pain, constantly had back pain, constantly just on and on and on. All these health issues, which in this country, at least in the United States, for those of you listening in Jamaica and Japan and all over the world, you don't necessarily have this problem, but they're quick to just shove medication in your face. Wow. That's the first thing to do. They'll never ask you about like what is going on that's causing this. They just give you medication to treat it. And a lot of the medications ended up doing more damage to me physically than help. And I'll tell you, within 3 months of me retiring from the Navy, like literally saluting and taking my uniform off, I literally went from migraines every single day to maybe one every 2 or 3 months. And to this day, I have one maybe, I don't know, every 6-7 months. And it's usually when I start stressing about something. I already know that I'm stressing about something subconsciously because I have a migraine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Migraines are actually one of my... It's funny that we've never talked about this, but migraines are also one of my indicators. And if I'm working at a job and it's like, man, I just can't get... It's just not working. Migraines will start popping up. And it's an indicator. And Mel keeps me on track because she's like, okay, that's your third one this month. Right? Like, what are you doing to make sure that's not happening even more? Right? And your body will tell you. And it's like when your mom said, "Are you okay?" You knew all that, and you knew somewhere inside you knew, my body is telling me I need to slow down. My body is telling me I've done this as long as I can. It doesn't mean that it was always bad. And I think that's what people sometimes lose sight of. It's not like it was always. it's not a toxic job. It's just a demanding job. And there's just there's only so long that you can hold up to that. And to your point, being in the Navy, those exist, and they exist for a reason, and that's justifiable. There's no justification for that in corporate America. And there is no situation in corporate. There are very few situations in corporate America where truly what I'm doing today is life or death for someone. That does not include hospitals and things like that. But I'm talking about corporate, white collar, knowledge working America.
Yeah.
Your report will get there when it gets there.
You really want to blow your mind? You know, in the Middle Ages, the average serf worked less than we do today.
I know, dude.
Like real talk. Real talk. You're talking about a guy that gets up in the morning and tends to farm to give food and whatever to his king or duke or whatever, worked less than we work today.
Yep. And we have made the work. So, oh my goodness, we can really get deep on this. So let's subject for future state, talking about how wealth accumulates in a small number of people, especially in the United States of America. And almost all that can be attributed to technological advancement. People owning the technology are getting rich off of it. And the working class folks, the folks who work every day, are not benefiting from that. And if we benefited wholly from the technology that we had created, we should be working less. And that's not what's happening. The trend is actually going the other direction, where not only are we working more, but the technology is allowing us to have exponentially more output. And humans are not built. We have not evolved. It takes us a long time to evolve. Right? We're not, as a species, we are evolving still. And we're changing how we produce offspring, right? We're changing all these things about us, and we will evolve to be consumers of knowledge, and just like we did to be agriculturally minded, whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
And we're not evolving fast enough. And so our brains and bodies can't handle the amount of information that comes in, that kind of things that are demanded of us, the kind of hours we have to work every day.
Yeah.
It just can't keep up. And we have, I can't be the only one that has read about this, and we have a mental health crisis.
Oh, for
sure. And it starts with a lot of people, at least at Generation X and older, don't think they should be happy. And I am glad to see that younger generations are saying, you know what, screw you, man. You know what I'm going to do for a living? I'm going to sharpen pencils and chase butterflies. Well, how are you going to make money? I don't think that matters as much as you think it matters, right? Like, it's just...
Yeah. Well, and I love that you're bringing this up, because one of my kids, one of the ones I told you that graduated, she's the one that graduated with a bachelor's in psychology. So as I was getting ready to retire from the Navy, for those of you that don't know, I'm a 100% disabled veteran, and the way that I got there was a good friend of mine who I still talk to on occasion. He retired 2 years before me, and he said, look, man, here's the thing. When you're in the military, you were taught, my knee hurts. It's fine. Your knee hurts. Just ignore it. It'll go away. A week later, your knee hurts. It's fine. Ignore it. It'll go away. And you keep doing that. He's like, you're taught that because you're supposed to do a job. I have to go do whatever it is, carry a rifle, carry a backpack, whatever the case would be. I got to do my job. I don't got time to worry about my knee, my ankle, my back, my shoulder, whatever the case would be. He's like, you're getting ready to retire. So you sit down with a guy who says, tell me your physical ailments. You need to just vomit out every single freaking thing that is wrong with you, from eczema to dry scalp to freaking ingrown hairs. He's like, say everything. He's like, you just did 20 years in the Navy. There's zero reason why you shouldn't get out 100% disabled. And it doesn't mean that you're disabled and you can't do a job, by the way. Okay? There's different levels of disability. So when this sailor got out of the Navy, she only did 4 years in the Navy. So when she got out, she was 22. And I remember around the time she was talking to me about getting out, I told her exactly that. I said, almost verbatim. I said, you need to tell that person every single thing that you have ailing you. It doesn't matter, hangnail, freaking whatever the hell it is. And she got 100% disabled. So she got 100% disabled at 22 years old, right? So she's got to check. She's got enough money coming in where she legitimately doesn't need to work. Like,
Yeah.
she's a professional student right now, which is fantastic. She's doing the thing, but every time we talk, she talks about how guilty she feels because she is getting that money as disability, and she feels like she doesn't deserve it, right? I think I got through to her because one of the things I talked to her about is I said, first of all, I understand you're being humble, and I appreciate that you see homeless people on the streets every day, whatever the case would be, because she does live in Southern California, so we all know the situation in California, so she sees it all the time. I said, but here's the breakdown. How many hours a day do you work when you're in the military? She's like, we used to work like 12, 14. I said, no, you work 24 hours. If your chief called you at 3 a.m. and said you need to come in, you'd come in. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
You work 24 hours. So we did some quick math. I said, I want you to do 24 hours times 7 days a week times 52 weeks a year. Tell me what the hours are. And then I want you to divide that by a 40-hour work week. Tell me how many years you were in the Navy. Turns out she was in the Navy for 17 years. And was working that working time. I was like, so don't you sit there and tell me for one moment you don't deserve that disability. She's like, well, by that, and then she jokingly said, well, by that metric, you've been in for like a million years. We did the math. I was in the Navy for 99 and a half years.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and even so, you're being generous because you used 40 hours, 52 weeks a year. Right, and
if you work 40 hours a week, right? Like, that's not the norm even nowadays.
Well, and we should be working less than 40 hours. This is what. So it's like this. It's 100%, man. I don't know what the. Okay. Do you remember the tornadoes that hit Alabama, Joplin, Missouri? You remember that tornado outbreak a while back? Tuscaloosa in particular was impacted. Yeah. I was working at a place, and there was a woman who worked there who had just come over from Germany. And so tornadoes hit, and look, my house was damaged. It was bad. It was real bad.
Right.
But the next morning, the CEO of the company I was at, it was only a 30-person company. No, this was it was even smaller than that. Anyway, he called everyone individually and said, get your ass to the office. Now, we were in shock. People died. It was, entire neighborhoods were destroyed. They are still, by the way, Hapa fodder. I'm here to tell you, I drive through them. They are still flat.
That was months ago.
And it was years ago. And people don't, it was like 2015. And people don't realize, people don't realize how much damage that stuff does and how long term it is, because we forget about it very quickly and we move on. In fact, the only song I ever wrote, start to end, was about this event. However, he said, come to the office. Now, the right thing that we thought was going to happen, every one of us thought this when we were like, go to the office, is he's going to be like, let's get some water, let's get some trucks. Dude, you got a truck, let's put some water in the back of your truck. We're going to take it over to where the people are struggling. They're picking up their family members out of broken houses. Like, let's go help somebody.
Legit
we get over there and he's like, get to work. Yeah, and he's like, get to work. Now, here's what happened in that moment for me. This woman who was from Germany looked completely shocked. So she came to me about 30 minutes later. She sat down at my desk and she was like, hey, I know Americans have this just get on with it and be productive attitude, but I don't think I'm comfortable with this. So this is what she told me, right?
So wait, let's stop for a second, because this is a German. Yes. This is a German saying this, right? The epitome of like industrial might thinking here. Okay.
Yep, 100%. And so a German woman says to me, I know Americans have this kind of get on with it, just go be productive attitude, but I'm not comfortable with this. And I asked her, what are you not comfortable with? And she said, people died. My house was damaged. She'd never experienced a tornado.
Right.
And if you've never been through that, like, I grew up in a state where it happens a lot, so I'm they're still scary as hell. But if you've never been part of it, it is absolutely, positively terrifying.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
And I'll tell you this, within 3 days, she went back to Germany. Didn't even quit. Just, I'm out. So that ruined her on the United States. Now, there were the rest of us in the office went and told the CEO, man, screw you, we're going to help somebody. So we actually left and got chainsaws and did whatever we did, right? But at the end of the day, that attitude that she expressed to me is what we're raised on, where you're supposed to just suck it up. You're supposed to just get on with it and be productive, and who cares if you die along the way? That is not a thing that is something we should be sustaining.
Can you just say that one more time? Like, cares?
Who cares if you die along the way?
Like, that alone should stop some people in their tracks, because for those of you that haven't been, and I guess doesn't necessarily have to be like a corporate American thing, but people die all the damn time from stress-related stuff, work-wise. All the time.
All the time.
Oh, and that's where I was headed to when I was talking about that girl not believing that she deserved that money. And I told her, I said, because she's like, I feel like I owe more than I get. I said, look, you know how you pay that back? She's like, how? I said, just be a better person. Just be a good person. Be a good neighbor. Be good to people that you see from day to day. Like, don't be a douchebag, you know? Like, if you have that thought, you're humble enough already in your head to think, I don't deserve this. Because, by the way, I have thought about this many times, by the way. I retired from the Navy at 39 years old, right? Getting a paycheck the day I walked out of the Navy, and getting disability the day I walked out of the Navy. And I'm not going to talk about how much I make, but I obviously make enough where I don't have to work anymore.
Yep.
Right? I pay a mortgage. I can get a car payment today if I wanted to. I can pay my bills. I'm obviously able to road trip. By the way, gas sucks. For those of you on the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest, I am literally paying $1.15 less than you guys per gallon.
Ooh.
Okay. It was roughly $1,000 of gas one way.
Wow.
One way for my truck. Okay.
Wow.
Yes. So
that's a lot, man.
Right. So I had that internal fight, because there were many times where before I left the company that I worked for after the Navy, I was in my head, I had that conversation like, what do you mean you think now's the time to just retire for life? Like, you need to work. Why would you do this? Why, like, you can't do this. And it's right. And it's that mentality of, well, okay, so here's the deal. I made a promise to myself that I would attempt my damnedest to be a good person, good neighbor, good friend, good family member, whatever it is. Like, just be good. And that's where that phrase, that be a better human, came from, was just be good to each other. Like, you know, the only time that you're ever going to hear me talk any politics or anything, all these wars that are going on, just stop. Stop fucking, excuse my language, killing each other. Like, I don't care who is right or who is wrong. Just stop. Stop all of it. Like, we're all here together. Like why do we do this to each other? Like, humans are the only species on the planet that does this to each other, right? But the flip side to it, there is good people in this world. Like you said, like, there's people that just left work to go help, right? Like, those people 100%. Exist. Like, that's great. Let's talk about Lahaina. Do you know what's going on in Lahaina? Do you have any idea how many people in Maui have rebuilt their homes?
No, I don't, actually.
None. Not a single one. None of them can afford to build their homes. Plus all of the zoning, plus all of the contracts, plus, like, none of them could afford to rebuild their own homes. Like, how horrible is that we do that to our own people?
You know, it's interesting.
Ridiculous.
The tornadoes I'm telling you about, it was really fascinating. There was the next town next to me, that got commercial buildings were flat. And this is why when I say tornadoes are terrifying, I don't think people realize the power of a tornado.
No, yeah. Legitimately, right? The finger of God. Like,
and these were F5s, right? These were not to be messed with. And commercial hotels were gone, right? This was not like...
That's crazy.
I think people don't realize how devastating these can be. But this whole town, right, got devastated. And similar to what you're saying, the city government came back and was like, we're not going to let you rebuild unless this. And the whole point was they wanted to re-commercialize areas or whatever the case may be. and people just aren't, on the whole, people are just not good to each other nowadays. And it really costs you nothing to be kind. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
And people should not feel guilty. You were talking about this person that who was like feeling guilty or whatever. You should not feel guilty for seeking happiness. And I think that's something that's kind of ingrained into us, is as if it's somehow you are failing if you're trying to be happy. I'll never forget, I spent a lot of years being a musician. I never did that at a time where I didn't also work at least one full-time job. And it always was a kind of a thought where being a musician, because that made you happy, was not being a productive member of society.
It's still looked at that way.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. And it's like, that is such a toxic thing that I had to at some point work through. Right? What's more likely to outlive me? My art or that TPS report?
Holy crap! That is a perfect. Do you think there's ever a musician, like a big musician, that thinks that way? That's like, I need to constantly be putting out music for whatever label or whatever, but that actually thinks that way, that like, I'm creating something I love and it's going to be around for a long time.
100%. I've known quite a few. And it is an interesting thing. The folks who can turn their art into business, it changes it. You were saying earlier about anything becomes a job, right, when you do it. And that's no different. But I have known some people who've been very successful who also were able to say, this is my art and it is my job, but it still makes me happy. And that is a different mindset than we have with most other jobs. We kind of look at jobs like you're supposed to go in and get yelled at and be miserable, and you're supposed to hate it. That's why it's a job. And but that's what we think, and it's messed up. It is completely messed up. And it's like we seek out these reasons to be stressed out about something. My wife and I had this conversation. She no longer works outside the home, right? And this has been years. And I'll never forget when she stopped working. She had all these stresses at work. She worked in high finance, right? So she would have these high stresses. And she comes out of the workforce, and I noticed a month and a half, 2 months later, she's still stressed at the same level. It was just about different things. And so people have been kind of trained to have a level of anxiety and stress that's just unhealthy. And I think people should not feel guilty for trying to get rid of that. You should not feel guilty for saying, I want to have a happier life. I want some of this stuff to melt away. I want to find what makes me happy. Because there are people who are happy doing... I have a belief that if we took society and we stacked everyone up next to each other, and people can't do this, that I believe this, people can't tell you what they're great at. Right. If someone's good at something, they can tell you all about it. I think all about what they're good at. If they're great at something, it's because it came natural to them and they take it for granted. So they generally can't tell you what they're great at. But if we could sit everyone down and say, what are you great at? And we laid everyone out. And we said, cool, then you're going to go do this for society and this for society, this for society. We could build a balanced society. Now, that's a dream state. But what we've done on the opposite end of it is force everyone into situations they're unhappy with. You've got pissed off billionaires, dude.
Yeah.
Like our highest examples of billionaires run around trolling people and yelling about how shit's messed up for them all the time right now. What more do you need out of life? What is it that's going to make you feel like you've been, you've won the game? What? There's nothing else to give you. And so if you can't be happy, if you can look at folks that are at that level and they're not happy, you should not feel guilty for seeking happiness. Whatever that takes, whatever that looks like.
I think though I think also that's kind of a dream though, because you have people going back to this kid, my kid. He feels guilty for having all this benefit from being in the Navy, but I think a lot of it's also not self-imposed. Like people are like, we'll ask her. Oh, sure. She's not even 30 yet. Like, what do you do for a living? And she's like, whatever I want.
Oh, dude.
And then they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, you need to have some kind of focus. Like, what are you doing? And she doesn't have an answer for that. And she's like, like even this bachelor's that she got in psychology, she actually told me the reason I did this was to try to tell people that I'm doing this. Like, yes, she's
Yeah. No,
interested in
absolutely.
being a psychologist. She wants to
Yeah.
help people, but it
Yep.
was more because people expect you to have done X, Y, Z by the time you're however old, and it's like, I don't know if it's my stubborn nature, because it's easy for me to talk about this stuff, because one of the things that I don't talk about is my own self-imposed isolation. Like, I did that from the moment, I got divorced from my ex-wife back in 2010, 2011, and ever since then I've kind of self-imposed this isolation kind of thought process. Like, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks, right? Like, I'm living my life however I want to live. It's not necessarily right. Yes, there are people that don't benefit from it, and to be honest with you, that was one of the things that kind of woke me up, was my mom getting sick and passing away, because that self-imposed isolation affected that relationship too, because I didn't spend enough time with her. Now, some of that was COVID and the lockdowns, and unfortunately all that hit right as I left the Navy, because my expectation was to go home on a regular basis, and I wasn't able to do that. But so a lot of that is societal norms that I think I wish, and it's weird to me, maybe it's weird for me to say this, but I feel like you're also in a perfect position, because you got two young adults that you can kind of instill that in. And I could already kind of tell. Look, I've only met 7 kids for like maybe an hour, like the time that we met 2 years ago. And I'll already tell you that they're already a cut above, just because of by nature of how you and Mel are, which is fantastic. But I wish that on everybody. I wish that everybody could recognize that, yes, we're all people. We're trying to make it through the life, day to day, whatever the case may be. But like, your own happiness is actually kind of important in this life.
And you're the only one.
Thought,
and you're the only one who can control it. I think that's really the lesson, right? Is you can't depend on anyone else for it. And you said something earlier I wrote down. I've had a pet peeve for a long time, which is that question. When you first meet somebody, what do you do for a living? And we've so normalized that as the...
It's like the first thing that comes out of everyone's mouth.
It's
right?
it's like the standard greeting. I changed many years ago, so that when I meet someone for the first time, and a lot of times when I meet someone, because of the work I do in the position I'm in, it's in an event that is revolving around careers and professional life and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And so it would actually be more acceptable in that world to be like, what do you do, right? But I don't do that. What I do is I meet the person, learn their name, say their name is Jane. I'm like, Jane, why don't you tell me about Jane? What is it that makes Jane Jane? Yeah. And to watch the way people respond to that, as opposed to, Jane, what is it you do? Right? Because the transactional nature of the question of what do you do is what can I get from you? That's actually what I'm asking you. How can I take advantage of your skills? That's what someone's asking. What a weird way to meet someone for the first time, rather than what drives, what do you get into? Like, what do you geek out about? What makes you excited and happy?
And
that's
to
all
be
I
clear, that's not a derogatory or like negative question. Like, it's just how we've gotten used to asking things.
Right. No one should feel bad for asking it. It's just, it is legitimately the accepted first greeting at a dinner party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To the point where I had to tell my wife at one point in the many years ago, back before we had kids and we were out a lot, when we go to dinner parties, people say, what do you do? What does your husband do? That's how it works. You go.
Yeah.
I actually had to tell them I sell life insurance. Because of what I did, because someone would find out what I did, and they would absolutely come ask me for, hey, man, I got this idea for a website. It's like Facebook for puppy mills. Yeah, it's going to be huge. And it's like, it's like, dude, I don't want to make Facebook for puppy mills. The world shouldn't have had Facebook. Right. Facebook for puppy mills. Right. So like and so it got so bad that people were like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And then immediately they turn that into, oh, I could use you. That's not
And
how
then they
humans are
file
meant
that
to
away for when they need something, right? Like,
and in humans, we can engage at such a better level, and we can take care of each other at such a better level just by walking in and being like, I would actually rather know you. I don't care. You may tell me what you do. If that's
and
like
to be
super
clear,
important to
that
you.
is not a normal thought process, by the way. Like, I would like
It's
to know
not.
you. That's not. It blows people away, you know, and I've had people that think that I am awkwardly interested in somebody. I don't know if that's how, like, a good descriptor. Like, no, I
I
am,
know.
but I'm not. Like, I just want to know who you are. You know what I mean? So, like, I'll tell you something I've grappled with for the last 6 years. So, Chris, since you're fully retired, what do you do every day?
What do you even do? I just sit on the couch and eat bonbon. What?
Actually told so many lies that I don't even know what is the truth. Like, I go fishing, I switch from Astro, I mow the, like, all these things. I have to make things up because people just look at you with a blank stare if you don't have something listed. Now, don't get me wrong. Mentally, psychologically, and physically, if you are not doing something on a day-to-day basis, that is not good. But that doing something could be planting petunias or plowing your backyard or, you know, going to
It could be something different every day.
whatever, right? And
Yeah.
most people cannot fathom that, and I will tell you, I can't even fathom it. I don't even know
No.
what I can get down to every day. Like, and
Yeah.
and so I think that's the other thing. That is a result specifically of being told that I have to work a 9 to 5 every day or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
I
right.
legitimately don't even know what I can do every day. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah. I saw a TED Talk many years ago at this point, but this kid was a kid, and he was talking about the question he got asked all the time. And he was probably, I think, 12 years old when he did this TED Talk. Unbelievable kid.
12 years
And
old.
the question,
Holy crap.
doing a TED Talk, and TED Talks are hard.
Yeah.
And he got asked this question all the time: what do you want to be when you grow up? And something about that question had struck him wrong. And the question is expected to be met with an answer of, oh, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be, right? You have these like things. So as a child, we're putting these pressures on.
Yeah.
And I've seen it with my kids, right? What do you do? What do you want to do when you grow up? That happens all the time with my kids.
Sure.
And this kid, the TED Talk was about his answer, which is, when I grow up, I want to be happy.
That's fantastic.
Like, how good is that?
Yeah.
And the entire TED Talk was about the steps that he and his parents were taking at that early stage in his life to make that become true. Now, is gainful employment probably part of that process? Yes.
Sure,
But you can actually have jobs that make you happy.
Yeah.
Right? You can do, I think the Japanese had it right, when you're talking about the feudal system, right? There was a lot of issues with that, but everyone had a place, and the job of your, entitled landowners, your royal adjacent folks, was to respect that order. A fisherman was not less than a samurai, right? It was a huge breach of the samurai's etiquette to treat anyone beneath them, right? That was not a thing you were to do. You were out of order when you did that. And that's how we actually should be treating each other, right? You shouldn't be like, well, the CEO is more important than janitor. I promise you.
Yeah,
that janitor
that is not the
doesn't show.
case.
Right, that janitor don't show up for 3 days, you gonna notice.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
CEO plays golf for 3 days, you ain't gonna notice, right? Like,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of those
yeah.
will be noticed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, to me, I think there's ways that we could just take some real small steps. Stop asking people, what do you do? Just don't ask that. It's such
Yeah.
a like imposing. It's an imposition to the person that they may not want. And make the question is, what are you into?
Yeah.
Or just start there. Like, I mean, what are you into? And well, let me tell you. And you may find the relationships that you form are much deeper, much more quickly.
Well, and even if you don't have a deep relationship with that person, you're going to be remembered just for asking the question.
Sure. Well, your story about Anthony Bourdain sits down.
I
stuck with you forever.
legitimately will never forget that man so long as I live. Like,
Right.
and I'm sorry, I'm gonna tell it again. Y'all are gonna hear it. I'm sorry. Because it is I to this day am so angry that I didn't take a picture with him. But I was just so starstruck. It didn't even cross my mind. But also at that time, phones weren't, as much of a big deal. Sitting at a bar in O'Hare, Chicago O'Hare Airport, I'm having a beer. I'm in uniform. I'm flying somewhere. I think I was flying to the East Coast from the West Coast. Dude walks up. Anthony Bourdain wasn't a big deal at this time. Like, he was kind of like his Kitchen Confidential article had been released recently, but it was kind of a big deal, but nobody really knew him. Dude taps me on the shoulder, says, "Hey man, is this seat taken?" Because my sea bag was sitting in that chair at the bar. I was like, "Oh no problem." And I grabbed the sea bag, dropped it on the floor. I was like, "Have a seat." And he literally just turned to me and said, "What's your name?" And we just started talking. I had no idea who this dude was at that time, right? No clue. Just knew he was like, "Hey, call me Tony," blah blah blah. He's like, "Can I buy you a beer? You're in the military." He bought me a beer. We talked a little bit about it. I was just a stupid kid at the time. He was a chef. I told him I loved cooking and loved, like, what is your advice if you want to get into it at the time, blah blah blah. We go our separate ways. Don't see him for 4 or 5 years. Sitting at a bar in San Diego, again at the airport. I think I was flying home or something like that. I wasn't in uniform. This is the thing that sticks with me. I wasn't in uniform. I'm sitting at the bar. Seat next to me is open. Tap on my shoulder. This dude called me out by name. He's like, "Hey, man, you remember me?" And I, like, 404, brain not found. Like, I just looked at him. It was like, no idea. Like, I just didn't know what to say. I was like, "Mr. Bourdain," or something like that. I said something stupid like that. He was like, "Come on, man. I told you to call me Tony. Like, how you been? Blah, blah, blah." Like, how 4 or 5 years later, how does this dude remember me? Just some kid that I had a beer, like, he bought me a beer. Like, how does he remember that? And at this time, now he was doing, like, hardcore into No Reservations, the show and everything. So this guy, there was paparazzi, people taking pictures the whole time. Like, so, Justin, there's probably pictures out there somewhere. Just somebody in chat said no pictures didn't happen, for those of you that are listening. But he remembered me, and he bought me another freaking beer. Like, come on, man. Like, that will solidify to me that Anthony Bourdain was probably one of the most amazing celebrities on the face of the planet. Like, to remember, and you saw it in all of his productions, right? You saw it.
100%. 100%.
He would be talking shit or whatever to the cast, the crew rather, but he would make sure that they were taken care of. Like, that guy, he had his demons or whatever, but come on, man. Like, I think it was 5 years. I think it was 5 years after the first time I met him, and he remembered. Like, come on. Like that. And that's the type of thing that I try to say, like, be better. Just be better to each other. Like that. Like, I don't expect you to remember someone's name, random run-in, 5 years, whatever.
Right.
But I don't know what I said to him to get into his mind or whatever, because I know we were just talking about, I was in the military and he was a chef. We were just shooting shit back and forth or whatever. I don't know what I said for him to remember that, but obviously it was something. Or he was just one of those people that remembers everybody's names. I don't know.
There's a word for the opposite of that, right? When you ask someone, "What do you do?" whatever, it's reductive. And people are trying to reduce you down to something that they can associate with or understand or put a pin on. And it takes a lot of guts to be like Anthony Bourdain was in those moments and say, "I'm not going to be reductive. I'm going to acknowledge that you're a human." And he was someone who could take that imprint. I met a human.
Yeah.
That human left an imprint. I remember that imprint. And that's probably something we should all endeavor to be better at, right? Don't be reductive to other people. Other people are complex. They got dreams, hopes, fears, all the kind of stuff you got, all the kind of crazy stuff we got in our heads. They got it too. And so reducing them down to a single thing, a single label, "What do you do?" "I'm a whatever." That is so so unfortunate for how we interact with each other. And I don't think all societies do that. We definitely do that here in North America. And so I'd say, go ahead.
Is that a human thing? Is that an American thing? Do you think more of, or
I think I've been told that there are societies where it's rude to ask that.
okay.
But I don't know, right? I'm not well traveled enough to say yes or no. I know that here in the States, for certain, it is the norm. What do? You go to a bar in New York City, you meet someone new, the first question they're going to ask is, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean that's New
just the way it
York
works.
though, right? Like that's a shaker and mover town though too. Like is that? Well, I'm not questioning that that's like a typical first question because every meeting
Yeah. Right.
that I've ever had ever since I've left the Navy has always been, what do you do? And
Yep.
and maybe it's one of those questions that's kind of caught me off guard since I've left the Navy because I don't understand why do you ask that? Like, why does it matter? Like, are you trying to categorize me into the haves or have-nots? Like, is that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I do know what you mean. There was a conversation I had with my wife, and this has been a couple years back now, but I would get these invites. This was pre-COVID. I would get these invites, and they'd be like, hey, can you get coffee? Oh my God, I haven't heard from this person in 2 years. I would love to catch up with you. Because to me, the worst way for a relationship to end is for it to fade out.
Sure.
So,
and you don't know. You don't know why or whatever.
Well, and I'm the person who will reach out on some routine. It might be once a month or every couple of months, but I'll say, how are you doing? Right. And what really sucks is when the other person doesn't put in that effort. Right. So to me, I have a lot of relationships that have gone that way. And you mark them up to be like, okay, cool. They were at a different place in their life. There's nothing bad about it, but I don't like that. So someone would reach out and they'd be like, hey, can we get together and get lunch? Can we get coffee? And I'm like, oh my God, they want to catch up. That is so amazing. Love that person. Would love to see them. And inevitably in the first 7 minutes, it's like, you hiring? Or do you have access to this thing? And it was a very transactional thing. And I've always remembered how you can't really be mad at that person. They see you as a means to an end, right? And it's not really
necessarily malicious, right?
It's not an indictment on them. They don't mean it in any bad way. But it feels very bad on the other side of that conversation for me to feel like transactional, especially if I'm buying the coffee. So, right, especially if I paid. Like being treated like you're useful to me, but I don't care about you is like a real it's never settled well with me, at least.
Maybe that's why I've had this connection with a lot of chefs, because I feel like if you're a lot of the chefs out there that are popular, so I'm talking like Sean Brock, Anthony Bourdain, even people that aren't chefs like Stanley Tucci is a very thoughtful
He's been doing a lot
person.
lately.
He's been doing a lot. David Chang. There's a lot of folks out there. I maybe it's a mentality of being a chef because you're providing sustenance for people. And in order to be a chef, you really have to love what you do. Because everyone remembers shitty chefs, right? If you're a shitty chef, like, not to go to that person's restaurant or whatever the case may be. We're not going to eat that. The good chefs, the ones that really care about the product, care about input, output, so the good supply and good output, I feel like those are the ones that really probably care about people. And I think maybe that's why it's resonated with me, because my mom's like, if you read the scientific books, there's no love language that's food, right? There's no love language that's food. But my mom's love language 100% was food. Like, if you weren't feeling well, and that's, I'm not trying to say my mom is better than anyone else's, even though my mom is better than everyone else's mother.
I'm just not saying it out loud.
But she was the type of mom, I think it's Italian. I may be wrong, and for those of you in Europe can correct me, but there's a greeting that occurs instead of how are you? Their greeting is, have you eaten? And I don't know if it's Greek or Italian. I can't remember. It's one of those nations. That's like the standard greeting. Have you eaten? And that to me is a big deal, because like again, going back to, obviously I'm a fanboy, but one of Anthony Bourdain's quotes is, if you really want to get to know somebody, share a meal with them.
Yep.
Right.
Share a meal with them. Absolutely.
And that's something like trying to be better with each other. Like just I mean, I know I'm rambling. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going with this, but I guess I just wish that as a, yeah.
Be a better person, man. Like, treat each other better. And really what it's coming down to, this whole conversation really is coming down to, we believe, I think you and I agree, where we don't always agree on everything, and that's great, but we agree that you can evoke a deeper relationship with someone very easily by just not reducing them down to some of these unhealthy behaviors that we've seen. Like, treat people better, be a better human. Don't feel guilty. These are, I'm looking through my notes, right? Don't feel guilty for trying to be happy.
Yeah.
And don't treat people like shit, right? Like, that's really, at the end of the day, don't treat people like they are some transactional unit to be moved around. That's a human being.
Yeah, for sure. And by all means, understand that, like, everyone has the cure for everything, and nobody has the cure for everything.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
At the end of the day, like that's. I don't know, especially in this day and age with everything going on in the world and everything. I just wish that everybody could just take a breather for a second. Like, can we just call out, Friday? Like, everybody just stop for a second. Like, take
I'm gonna send you. Have you ever watched? There's a magician. I'm gonna say magician kind of loosely, that did I think in New York, called In and of Itself. His name is Derek Delgadio. Have you ever heard of this?
I don't think so.
I'm going to send this to you. I'll post it here. Where's chat? Where's chat? Chat up. Yeah, here's chat. Okay, so I'm going to post a link to this. But this is something I would encourage anyone who's interested in this subject. I would encourage you to go watch this. It's going to be a bit heavy, meaning the way it works is you need to sit down and watch it start to finish with no distractions. Don't stop it. Don't do anything else. Turn off your phone. Do whatever you need to do, but watch this whole thing. And this was an act that he did in New York, which is very fascinating. So I won't give away too much, but definitely go check this out if you get time to do it. And this is the kind of stuff you're interested in. I think you will really, really, really enjoy this. So yeah, Derek Delgadio's In and of Itself. I think it's on Hulu. I think it's where you can find it, but definitely worth checking out. And I think we've kind of wound down the primary conversation there. I want to find out what you're watching.
Yeah. So
what you watching, Hapa?
So Rita's probably gonna get mad because so I started this about 2 months ago. When I say 2 months ago, it's probably about 2.5 months ago, because the month where I left on this trip doesn't really count. But I try to get off the computer at a certain time, and you and Deacon used to give me shit because they were like, "Oh, you're going to bed at 8 o'clock in the afternoon or evening." It's like, no, I'm actually just trying to get away from the computer, because we spent basically since 2020, we've all been glued to these computers.
Yep.
All day, every day. And to be honest with you, I noticed my eyesight having issues, back, neck, shoulders having more issues. And when I get away, and even if it's just going from here to the couch to turn the TV on, it has made an immense difference physically and mentally to try to disconnect. Anyway, so putting shows on, watching. One of them is, oh my God, I can't remember the name of the show now. It's Stanley Tucci, Finding Italy.
Oh yeah, yep. I've seen that advertised.
So if you guys don't know Stanley Tucci, he's an actor, but he's actually a really good cook as well. He's Italian. His mom and dad are both Italian from Italy, and he literally goes to different regions in Italy and basically talks about the people there, food there, how they exist, what they eat, blah, blah, blah. Right up my alley, along with Anthony Bourdain and No Reservations and all those shows that I love. So I've been watching that. Highly recommend if you have Max, I think it is. I think it's on Max, which is one of the million or so subscriptions.
We got
that you
away
get
from
nowadays.
the 6 million channel DirecTV, and now I've got 6 million streaming services.
Yeah. So I've been watching that. I just recently started watching John Adams. That's a show that slipped past me back in the day. Paul Giamatti is an amazing actor. I don't think he gets enough credit for being how good of an actor he is.
Yeah.
And Rita, what's the other series that we were just watching? Dark Matter on Apple TV. Another amazing sci-fi show.
Another Apple TV banger, man. I'm telling you.
At this point, Apple should start paying me because I talk about Apple TV so much.
Tim Apple, if you're listening.
I'm just saying. Dark Matter.
Like your Anthony Bourdain story. That's my Tim Cook story. He's a nice guy.
I'm telling you. Also, Jennifer Connelly. Hello. Jennifer Connelly is in Dark Matter. Hello. And no disrespect to Rita or Mel, but Jennifer Connelly. Hello.
I think we're 3 episodes into Dark Matter, and we need to catch up. We have. And this is your fault. This is your fault. Though this is a result. What I'm about to say is directly a result of this podcast. And this segment of this podcast, we have to watch X-Files every night before we go to bed. Mel has gotten.
I love it.
She is eyeball deep in X-Files, and she is like.
You're welcome.
Do you remember the Bare Naked Ladies song One Week?
Yes, I know exactly what episode you're talking about.
We're watching X-Files with no lights on. We're Don LeMay's on. I hope the smoking man's in this one, right? Like that is. We say every night. She goes. We're on 8 right now.
Yes. Okay.
So we're to the point in the series where Mulder has gone missing and Doggett is now Scully's partner, right? So like Mel is just like, I hate this son of a bitch. Like,
stop.
Right.
It won't stop. You're gonna be like, get rid of this guy. Like, get rid of him. Yeah. So so X-Files. We watch every night. We're working our way through Dark Matter. I'm kind of interested in Acolyte, right, which is the new Star Wars thing with Carrie Ann Moss in it. I haven't heard great things, but I think if I had to pick a fan base not to make something for, it would be the Star Wars fan base. I think they can't like anything. Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I've seen so much negativity around that show. I've probably been sucked into the ether. Like, I just don't have an interest in it.
We haven't kept up with the Marvel stuff. We haven't kept up with the Star Wars stuff.
Same.
So
Obi-Wan was the last one that I think I was like all about.
And to me, Obi-Wan was
that was
so good.
Star Wars, right?
That was so good. The Vader interact. It was so good. So I think that, all of the shows.
Hold. That scene, I already know what you're talking about, where he's holding the lightsaber and it lights half his face blue and half his face red. You know that was incidental?
No.
That was an accident.
No.
They had no idea that was going to happen because of the way that they were holding the lightsabers when they filmed it, and when they watched the playback, everyone was like, holy shit.
Keep that.
Yes.
That is one of the most, to me, that is one of the most iconic cinematic moments in the Star Wars universe.
100%.
And that show, so I think all the shows, like if I talk about the Star Wars shows, if I watch all of them, the ones I've watched, I may not have on the whole loved the show, but there were things I loved about the show at times.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's all negative. But yeah, so we've gotten into X-Files, and that is a nightly routine at this point, working our way through them. I used to watch them way back in the day, right, when it was new. Yeah. And Mel never got it, and she was like, why did you love that show? And I was like, well, Gillian Anderson's kind of a thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
that's,
and she's like, now she gets that.
By the way.
She gets that now too. So, like, it's but the X-Files is what we've been keeping up with.
And Hannibal. That's the other show that I haven't.
Oh, really?
Watching.
Okay.
Hannibal.
I need to check that out. I haven't watched that.
Hulu or Amazon. I think it's on Amazon. But you have to be ready for Hannibal because obviously Hannibal's based around Hannibal Lecter. And
it's Hannibal, right?
Okay. Just wanted to.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you for the disclaimer.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, if you're not comfortable with the subject matter, you should look up Silence of the Lambs, which was the kickoff of the Hannibal
And then
Lecter
you'll know.
story.
Yeah.
Right, and then you'll know kind of what it's about. Don't just walk in. Any of these recommendations that we're making, please don't walk into them not knowing anything about them. You should definitely look them up. We should not.
Blindly listen to 7.5.
Do not. We are adults and we watch adult entertainment.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so Hapa, I'm gonna cover what I'm listening to because I'm excited about it and I've been wanting to tell you about it. Willie Nelson, new album out called The Border. And yeah,
What's it about?
which I need to.
Really?
Well, and there's a couple. Yeah. Willie Nelson. What was this? Let me see. What album is this for him?
Holy shit.
Willie, where are you, Willie? May the. When did it come out? Now I'm curious.
Okay, this isn't another one. This is the one that released in May.
Yeah, it was in May.
Okay.
It came out May the 31st.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like 2 weeks ago. But it is his, get this, 75th solo studio album.
Brother, he's 91 years old.
And he's still the best troubadour.
And
That guy.
probably smokes like a chip.
Oh my God, he does. He says he smoked weed on the top of the White House with every president since
So-
Nixon.
So,
There's an album coming out this Friday, in fact, from the Decemberists, and I love the Decemberists, so that's something worth checking out. Cage the Elephant had an album come out, worth checking that out. And then of course there's all the poppy stuff, that people have talked about that I won't go into, but you can get that news elsewhere. But yeah, check out Willie Nelson for sure. The Decemberists is coming out Friday, and then Cage the Elephant, if you haven't heard, it's a really good album.
you're the first. So I saw Willie Nelson's release. For some reason, I thought it was further back than that, but. 'cause
Well,
did
no, he had one.
Like,
Yes. You're
Like
thinking
a
about the
year
one in
ago,
like the
right?
winter. Not is like 6 months ago, right? Yeah.
so this is a
His
whole-
74th
whole
studio
nother-
album. Whole new studio album. Yep.
What are you doing, brother? What are you doing?
My man's is working. 75 studio
goodness.
albums. Even if you don't
Hey.
love like the country western troubadour style music, which is what Willie Nelson does, even if you don't love that, the fact that there's a 75th studio album
Yeah.
from one person, you should go check that out.
When was his first album?
Oh, that's a great
1962.
Oh my gosh.
62 years ago, he released his first album. Okay, look. 62 years, right?
Uh-huh.
So he's released more than one album a couple of years in a row.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Well, and Rita is saying something in chat about music recommendations. So I'm going to tell you, Rita, just so you know, on May the 17th, New Kids on the Block released a new album called Still Kids.
And Rita, we know that you wear denim, I'm sure, in memory of.
So I'm sure that you will be all about checking out that New Kids on the Block album.
Are you old
Yeah.
enough for New Kids on the Block? I don't think you are. I think you and I are, but I don't think she is.
I definitely remember New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, I think you and I
For sure.
were that era.
If you like cover stuff, have you ever heard of Apocalyptica?
Yeah.
They do cello music with Metallica. They have a new album out
heard
as well.
anything from them in a while.
They had a new album come out too. So if you like that kind of stuff, that's out. Definitely worth looking into.
So it doesn't happen often in 7, but I added a new rule to Hapa's rules.
So this trip of spiritual enhancement that you took recently got a new rule on the list.
Look, I know it probably sounds really stupid and cliche. For years, I've legitimately learned a lot about myself and a lot spiritually. Spiritually is the way you put it. That's perfect. But a rule that I added, it isn't mine. Okay, it's gonna sound really dumb, but it was something that was said by Terrence Howard. Okay.
Okay.
Actor, okay.
Yep.
If you guys don't know Terrence Howard is, for those of you that are more mainstream, you're probably, if you've heard about this, you might roll your eyes. The dude is incredibly intelligent. I think he's got multiple degrees. He's very intelligent, and when I say very intelligent, I mean on like physics and astrology level intelligent.
Yeah.
And I won't get into in depth more. Not audible. Am I muted? Check. No. I should be going across. Are you not able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Is it not going out on the stream? It should be going out on the stream. Anyway, crack on. One of the things he said in an interview recently was make time for life. And I think that rolls back to what we've been talking about. Make time for life. Audio is robotic right now. Hopefully, hopefully the audio will clear up on the recording. That's really annoying. Anyway, make time for life, and that's a pretty big deal.
Make time for life. That to me, Hapa, that's like a perfect way to end what we've been talking about today. Just make time for life. You know, I like it. I think that's just that to me. You can't say it better. Just
I
that's
would
great.
agree. I would agree. Anyway,
That's a good one.
where can they reach you at?
But I'm nowhere lately. But going forward, if you would like to find me, you can always find me at VII.TV, or you can hit me up. S3VYN is the nickname I've gone by since like 1998 online, and back when Lead Speak was cool and all that jazz. And you can find me on just about anything that way. So there's Twitter, X. Hap and I were trying to figure out what to call it earlier. We arrived at it's Twix, right? Whatever. So we're gonna call it Twix from now on. You can find me on the Twix. You can find me pretty much anywhere. Twitch. We will be hanging out on Twitch. I'm going to try to get back to streaming more soon. New show format coming soon. So yeah, that's where you can find me. What about you, Sir Hapa of the Fodder Clan? Where can you be found?
HAPA_fodder. You Google that, you'll find me everywhere. Either that's Instagram, Twitter, X, Twix, Facebook, whatever the case may be. That's where I'm at. So pretty straightforward. Hopefully we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. We're going to try to keep this up on the regular. Love the hell out of every single one of y'all, and appreciate the support you guys have been giving us for 2 years. 7.
2 years. 20th episode. 2 years. Congratulations, buddy. This has been a lot of fun. I can't point to a single time where I thought it was a stress, and I appreciate that from you. So you are doing your part in the world to make it so that someone else feels like it's not a transactional relationship, and I appreciate that from you.
Well, and I had told when Seven and I finalized the idea of doing this podcast 2 years ago, I had said we want this to be a no stress, chillax kind of thing we do. Seven has a real job, a real life. It's crazy, I know, to think about. But I didn't want it to be something that you're like, oh, I gotta go do this. Like, I don't want that. I don't ever want that, right? So.
Yep.
But yeah, here we are 2 years later, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks. What is that? What's the date on that?
The 26th.
There you go. Hopefully, 26th.
Yep, June the 26th. You can find us on
you believe
YouTube.
that,
Make
by the
plans
way?
to be there. That it's
June?
June the 26th, 2024? No, I can't. No, I'll be a year older on that day. So.
Hey!
Yeah. So yeah,
26
come
never
find
looked
us
so
on
good.
YouTube. I tell you what, man, 27 is going to be better. So come find us on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, it's a great opportunity to come find us on YouTube. We do watch chat. We do chat back with people. We talk about folks in chat. We're getting to the point we got some folks in chat hanging out, and it's really nice to have that. And I think it just makes the podcast better. So if you're listening to the podcast, come check us out on YouTube. It'll be June the 26th, 2024. We will start around 8 o'clock Eastern.
Love the hell of every single one of you. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Take care of each other. Be a better human out there, okay? Take it easy. Any final words?
Bye, everybody.
Bye.